Hello everyone. Welcome to session 17 of IS Baba's rapid revision series of 500 high probable topics for prelims 2020. I'm Pritham Reddy and I'll be dealing 15 important topics in this session which is very crucial for prelims examination this year. So our first topic is National Technical Textile Mission. So this particular technical textile mission is important because recently Cabinet Committee on Economic Affairs gave approval to set up this particular National Technical Textile Mission with a view to position India as a global leader in technical textiles. So it want to position our country as a global leader in technical textiles. So first we will see what is this technical textiles. The term technical textiles. So technical textiles are those textile products which are manufactured for non-aesthetic purposes and their primary function is for applications of industries. So it is the primary function is they are fabrics for industrial purposes such as automobiles, civil engineering, construction, agriculture, healthcare, industrial safety, personal protection, etc. Okay, so the major aim of this technical textiles is in applications of various industries, and this technical textiles is a high technology sunrise sector which is steadily gaining ground in India. So this National Technical Textile Mission aims at increasing the size of the technical textiles in domestic markets to 40 billion, and this would require an average growth of at least 10% per annum. And technical textile products are divided into 12 broad categories under this National Technical Textile Mission, like agrotech, build tech, cloth tech, geotech, home tech, industry tech, mobile tech, med tech, sports tech, etc., depending upon their application areas. And this particular National Technical Textile Mission, it will be implemented for 4 years starting from 2020 to 2021. So starting from this 2020, it will go on for 4 years, and later on it will move into sunset phase after 4 years period. And there are 4 important components, that is research and development and innovation with an outlay of 1000 crores, promotion and development of the market for technical textiles, export promotion and promoting technical education at higher engineering and technology levels related to technical textiles. And there will be a separate mission directorate which will be operational in the Ministry of Textiles. But you have to note here, the directorate will not have any permanent employment and there will be no creation of building infrastructure for the mission purpose. So next important topic is Pradhan Mantri Kisan Samman Nidhi. So this PM Kisan, it was launched in 2019 and it is a central sector scheme to provide income support to all land holding farmers families. So what you have to remember is all land holding farmer families. Okay. So initially in the beginning, when this PM Kisan scheme was launched during February 2019, its benefits were admissible only to small and marginal farmers families who had combined land holding up to 2 hectares. However, later this particular scheme was revised and now it has extended to all farmer families irrespective of the size of their land holdings. So under this PM Kisan scheme, all land holding farmer families shall be provided the financial benefit of rupees 6,000 per year. So all land holding farmer families will be getting 6,000 per annum per family. So payable in 3 equal installments of 2,000 rupees each. That is, every 4 months they get 2,000. So per annum they get around 6,000 rupees. So all land holding farmer families who have cultivatable land holding in their names are eligible to get benefit under this particular scheme. So next important topic is Atal Bhujal Yojana. So this Atal Bhujal Yojana, it is a center sector scheme which is worth rupees 6,000 crore for sustainable management of groundwater with community participation. So this Atal Bhujal Yojana works for a period of 5 years, which is starting from 2020 to 2025. And this Atal Bhujal Yojana envisages people's participation through the formation of water user associations, water budgeting, preparation and implementation of Gram Panchayat wise water security plans, etc. So this particular Atal Bhujal Yojana is being implemented by Ministry of Jal Shakti, which was earlier known as Ministry of Water Resources, River Development and Ganga Rejuvenation. So this scheme is being funded by Government of India and World Bank on the basis of 50-50. Okay. So it has been funded by Government of India and the World Bank on 50-50 basis, and the Atal Bhujal Yojana has identified over exploited and water stressed area for the implementation of the scheme, and especially in states like Gujarat, Haryana, Karnataka, Madhya Pradesh, Maharashtra, Rajasthan and UP. So these states have been selected according to the degree of groundwater exploitation and degradation, established legal and regulatory instruments, and also the experience in implementing initiatives related to groundwater management. So next important topic is International Conference on Standardization of Ayush Technologies. So there was a 2-day international conference on standardization of Ayush technologies, which was held in New Delhi 2020. So the conference was jointly organized by Ministry of Ayush and WHO, that is World Health Organization. So it adopted the New Delhi Declaration on collection and classification of traditional medicine diagnostic data. So you have to remember that this New Delhi Declaration, it emphasized the commitment of the countries to traditional medicine. Okay. So it emphasized the commitment of the countries to traditional medicine as a significant area of healthcare. At the same time, this particular conference, it sought the opportunity for including like traditional systems of medicines like Ayurveda, Unani, Siddha in the international classification of diseases. So this international classification of diseases, which is published by WHO, is the standard diagnostics tool for health management across the world. And this international classification of diseases provides a method of classifying diseases, injuries and causes of death. And more than 100 countries use this international classification of diseases system to report mortality rate, which is a primary indicator of the health status. So next important topic is SPICE Plus. So this SPICE Plus, which is an abbreviation for Simplified Proforma for Incorporating a Company Electronically. Okay. So this SPICE, as the name suggests, it is an application form for incorporating or registering a company with this Ministry of Corporate Affairs. So the Ministry of Corporate Affairs launched this particular SPICE Plus, which actually replaced the existing SPICE form. So there was this SPICE which was launched in 2016, and it acted as a single form for multiple services for incorporation of a company. Now this SPICE is replaced with SPICE Plus. So the SPICE Plus, apart from being an advanced version of the existing SPICE, the form is capable of serving multiple requirements like name reservation, incorporation, DIN allotment, mandatory like issuance of PAN, TAN, EPFO, ESIC, professional tax, opening of bank balance. So one can even acquire the GSTIN via this SPICE Plus form. Okay. So this SPICE Plus will act as a single application, and it will help for incorporation of companies, and it is done electronically. Okay. And this SPICE Plus would offer 10 services by 3 central government ministries and departments, especially Ministry of Corporate Affairs, Ministry of Labour and Ministry of Finance, and 1 state government, Maharashtra, for profession tax. Okay. So next important topic is 100 Springs initiative. So this 100 Springs initiative, it aims at involving access to safe and adequate water for the tribal communities who are living in very much difficult and inaccessible parts of the rural area. Okay, so this initiative will help in harnessing the potential of perennial springs water to address natural scarcity of water in tribal areas, and it also includes provision of infrastructure for piped water supply for drinking, and also it includes provision of water for irrigation, for community led total sanitation initiatives, and provision for water for backyard nutrition gardens, generating sustainable livelihood opportunities for the tribal people. And you have to remember this 100 Springs initiative, it was launched by Ministry of Tribal Affairs. So there is one more initiative, that is RAISE 2020. So RAISE is responsible artificial intelligence for social empowerment. So this RAISE 2020 is India's first artificial intelligence summit, which was held in Delhi and which was organized by government in partnership with industry and academia. Okay, so the summit will be a global meeting of minds to exchange ideas to use artificial intelligence for social empowerment, inclusion, and then transformation in key areas like healthcare, agriculture, education, smart mobility, among other sectors, right? So it is being organized by Ministry of Electronics and IT. So next important topic is 22nd Law Commission. So recently this Union Cabinet gave its approval to set up the 22nd Law Commission for a period of 3 years. And you have to remember, Law Commission of India is a non-statutory body. So this Law Commission of India is neither a constitutional body nor a constitutional body, but it is an executive body. So it is a executive body established by order of Government of India. Okay, so this Law Commission of India was originally constituted in 1955 and is reconstituted every 3 years. And we'll look at the composition. So the new panel will have 3-year term, and it has chairman and 4 full-time members, and there will be law and legislative secretaries. Okay, so there will be law and legislative secretaries who are in the law ministry. They will be the ex officio members of the commission. So these people are the ex officio members. So composition, it has a chairman, it has a 4 full-time members, and it has law and legislative secretaries in the law ministry who will be the ex officio members of the commission, and usually a retired Supreme Court judge or Chief Justice of a High Court will head the commission. Okay, so you have to know about Law Commission's functions. So you might be knowing simple Law Commission, it advises the government on complex legal issues. And the term of previous law panel ended last August, so that is like 31st August 2018. Okay, and a previous law commission was under Justice B.S. Chauhan, who actually supported simultaneous elections. The commission is established for a fixed tenure, and it works as an advisory body to Ministry of Law and Justice. So next important topic is Gram Nyayalays. See, they were established for speedy and easy access to the justice system in the rural areas. And this Gram Nyayalay Act came into force on October 2nd, 2009. So it has been almost like 10 years. So this Gram Nyayalay Act came into force on 2019, and it is for the state government to establish Gram Nyayalays in consultation with their respective high courts. And the act also authorizes Gram Nyayalay to hold mobile courts outside its headquarters. So the court can function as a mobile court at any place within the jurisdiction of such Gram Nyayalay, after giving wide publicity to that regards. and now Gram Nyayalay have jurisdiction over an area which is specified by a notification by the state government, again in consultation with their respective high court. And this Gram Nyalays, they are established generally at headquarter of every panchayat at intermediate level, and they are presided over by a Nyayadhikari. So Nyayadhikari, he enjoys same power, salary and benefits of a judicial magistrate of first class. And you have to also remember that these Nyayadhikaris are appointed by the state government in consultation with their respective high courts. So the Gram Nyayalays have both civil and criminal jurisdiction over the offences and nature of the suits. Okay. So next topic is Foreign Contribution Regulation Act, that is FCRA. So you might have read in news that the government has used this FCRA Act over the years to freeze bank accounts of certain NGOs who it found were affecting India's national interests for wrong purposes. Right? So this Foreign Contribution Regulatory Act 2010, it was implemented by the Ministry of Home Affairs. The Act ensures that the recipients of foreign contributors, they adhere to the stated purpose for which such contribution has been obtained. And under this FCRA Act, organization required to register themselves every 5 years. So this FCRA is a law which was enacted by Parliament to regulate foreign contribution, especially monetary donation provided by certain individuals or associations to NGOs and others within the India. So this Foreign Contribution Regulation Act was originally passed in 1976 and majorly modified in 2010. Okay, the government has used this particular act, as I said, over the years to freeze bank accounts of several NGOs. So all NGOs are required to be registered under the act to receive foreign funding. And according to the terms stipulated under this FCRA, an organization cannot receive foreign fund unless it is registered under the FCRA 2010 Act. And under FCRA Act, registered NGOs can receive foreign contribution for 5 purposes, that is social, educational and religious, economic and cultural. So social activities, educational activities, religious activities, economical activities and cultural activities. So NGOs can receive foreign contribution for these purposes. So next important topic is randomized controlled trial. So this randomized controlled trial is a type of scientific experiment that aims to reduce certain sources of bias when testing the effectiveness of new treatments. Okay, so this is accomplished by randomly allocating subjects to 2 or more groups, treating them differently and then comparing them with respect to a measured response. So one group, that is experimental group, and there will be one more group who are control group. So the first group, that is the experimental group, has the intervention being assessed, while the other, usually called the control group, has an alternative condition such as placebo or no intervention. So the groups are followed under conditions of the trial design to see how effective the experimental intervention was. So treatment efficacy is assessed in comparison to the control. There may be more than one treatment group or more than one control group. And recently, the winners of 2019 Nobel Prize in Economic Sciences, Abhijit Banerjee, Esther Duflo and Michael Kremer, so they considered this RCT to be instrumental. So they considered it to be instrumental in using RCT to test the effectiveness of various policy interventions, especially to alleviate poverty. Okay, so know about the randomized control trial. So next important topic is Himalayan butterfly, also known as golden birdwing. So now this Himalayan butterfly, named golden birdwing, it has now replaced southern birdwing, and now this gold birdwing is India's largest after 88 years. So gold birdwing is larger than the southern birdwing, which was earlier considered to be the largest. So the female golden birdwing are largest than the males. And recently in news, they had specified that female gold birdwing was recorded from Didi Hath in Uttar Pradesh, and largest male was from the Wankar Butterfly Museum in Meghalaya capital Shillong. Okay, and you have to remember few points that golden birdwing is IUCN least concern, and southern birdwing is also listed as least concern in the IUCN red list. And this southern birdling is more common in Western Ghats, and it is the state butterfly of Karnataka. Okay, southern birdwing is the state butterfly of Karnataka, and it is more common in Western Ghats of South India. Okay, whereas this golden birdwing usually they are found near the Himalayas. That's the name, Himalayan butterfly. So it was found in Uttarakhand and some part of Meghalaya. So next important topic is Mahadayi water row. So Mahadayi or Mandovi, so this was often in news because recently center issued notification on sharing the waters of this interstate Mahadavi among Karnataka, Goa and Maharashtra. So this Mahadavi or Mahadayi or Mandovi, which is the west flowing river, they originate in Bhimagad Wildlife Sanctuary, which is in Western Ghats. So this Bhimagad Wildlife Sanctuary, which is near the Belgavi district of Karnataka, Western Ghats, so it is where this particular river originates. So this river Mahadayi, okay, it is also called as Mandovi in Goa, and right now it is dispute between Goa, Karnataka and Maharashtra. So there might be a question can be asked like regarding Mahadayi is located in or originating in which particular state. Okay, so you can see it is in Karnataka. So next important thing why this particular river is in news, because of the Kalsa Banduri Nala project. So this project is undertaken by government of Karnataka to improve drinking water supply to the three district of Belagavi, Dharwad and Gadag. So it was planned in 1989. However, Goa raised an objection to it. It involves building across Kalasa and Banduri, like two tributaries of Mahadayi river, to divert water to the Malaprabha, a tributary of Krishna river. Okay, so you can see here, you can see Malaprabha river in the map, and you can see Kalsa Dam and Bandura Dam. So this Kalsa Bandura or Banduri has been a dispute between Goa, Karnataka and Maharashtra, and it involves building across Kalsa and Banduri, two tributaries of the Mahadayi river, to divert water to the Malaprabha, which is a tributary of river Krishna. And Malaprabha river supplies the drinking water to Dharwad, Belgaum and Gadag districts. So remember that. So next important topic is Malai Madeshwara Wild Sanctuary. So this Malai Madeshwara Wild Sanctuary, which is in Karnataka, it was in news because it is set to become a tiger reserve. So recently approval from the NTCA is expected to notify this Malai Mahadeshwara Wildlife Sanctuary as a tiger reserve. So Malai Mahadeshwara Wildlife Sanctuary, which is located in Chamarajanagar district of Karnataka, is a part of contiguous tiger habitat which is located very close to the tri-junction of the states of Karnataka, Kerala and Tamil Nadu. Okay. So next important thing what we have to remember is this Malai Madeshwara Wildlife Sanctuary. So it is part of a tiger habitat which is on the tri-junction of the states of Karnataka, Kerala and Tamil Nadu, that is Kaveri Wildlife Sanctuary, which is in Karnataka to its north and east, and Satyamangalam Tiger Reserve in Tamil Nadu to its south, and Biligiri Rangana Swami Temple Reserve, Tiger Reserve, Swami Temple Tiger Reserve in Karnataka to its west. Also, it becomes important, like you have to know about NTCA and also regarding the Project Tiger. Okay, so NTCA, that is National Tiger Conservation Authority, which is a statutory body launched in 2005 or 6, and they were launched due to the recommendation of the Tiger Task Force, and they supervise, coordinate, perform functions as provided in the Wildlife Protection Act 1972. Okay, so also try to remember M-Stripes, so monitoring system for tigers, which is an app-based monitoring system which was launched across Indian tiger reserves by this NTCA. So next important topic is Hampi and Vitla Temple. Supreme Court recently confirmed the Karnataka government authorities' decision to demolish buildings which were constructed around this Hampi World Heritage Site. So the constructions were in violation of the Mysore Ancient and Historical Monuments and Archaeological Sites and Remains Act of 1961. And also Archaeological Survey of India is contemplating to install a wooden barricade around the stone chariot inside Vitla Temple complex at the UNESCO World Heritage Site of Hampi in order to bid to protect this particular World Heritage Site from vandalism. So let's see about this Hampi. So Hampi is a UNESCO's World Heritage Site, and it is part of the Mauryan Empire, 3rd century BC, and the capital city during the 4 different dynasties in the Vijayanagar city was this Hampi. And this Hampi is located near the Tungabhadra river. Okay, and this Hampi Vijayanagara was the world's second largest medieval era city after Beijing. And this Hampi is described by UNESCO as an grandiose site of more than 1600 surviving remains of the last great Hindu kingdom in South India. And the Vitala temple, which is in Hampi, is an ancient monument that is well known for its exceptional architecture and unmatched craftsmanship. So it is considered to be one of the largest and the most famous structure in the Hampi, and the temple is located in the northeastern part of Hampi near the banks of Tungabhadra river. So this renowned Vitala temple, it dates back to 15th century. It was built during the reign of King Krishnadevaraya, okay, one of the rulers of the Vijayanagara Empire. So the Vitala temple is built in the Dravidian style of architecture. So the Vitala temple complex has the richly sculpted stone chariot, which is considered to be the most stunning architecture of this Vijayanagara kingdom. So the stone chariot or the Ratha stands in the courtyard of the temple, and it is one of the 3 famous stone chariots in India. The other 2 chariots are in Konark, that is Odisha, and Mahabalipuram in Tamil Nadu. So you have to remember about this Vitala temple. Okay, so these are the 15 topics for this particular session. We will meet with more sessions, multiple sessions in a day tomorrow. So thank you, and do subscribe and do comment if you have any queries.